First of all, let me thank IPE for conferring such an honorable award for me. I really don't think I have come to that level not to be able to be worthy of that, but still I will try my level best to go forward to be able to help more people, more women especially, so that we see a more gender-friendly, a gender more equal world in the days to come. So this is the company that I come from, and this is the third company that I have been working for. My career is almost for the last 28 years. And the background that I actually come from would not have seen me stand here today in front of all of you. I come from a very traditional Telugu community who have not seen women break any barriers, any sort of barriers outside of their homes. Among the community, my family is supposed to be known for empowering its women. And what do you mean by empowering women? It means allowing them to go to school, maybe to college to get a degree, but that's about it. Nobody in my family ever discussed when we were growing up whether we wanted a career, whether we wanted to work. Because traditionally the role of women, and for generations past, women have always played the typical housewife, the mother's role. And probably they thought that I would also continue to follow in their own footsteps. But I think somewhere in me there was a rebel. Not a typical rebel where I go and break things and I talk back. No, I was very, very conservative in that manner. But I always had dreams. I always had dreams that I would like to do something, and I would like to actually become like my father. My father's a doctor. He just recently stopped his practice, but he was a surgeon. He had his own private practice. He lived in the UK for close to, I think, 13, 14 years. I had my early childhood also in the UK. And I loved going to the hospital with him. And I loved looking at patients, I was a very small child, but I just loved that entire environment. So I always dreamt that I should become a doctor like him. When I was about 7, 8 years old, my family thought that growing up in such a westernized environment was not correct. It would probably lead me astray. So they sent me off to live with my grandparents. My grandparents at that point of time, my grandfather was living in Delhi. And he was the chairman cum managing director of Cement Corporation of India. And he had a very illustrious background. Of course, he too came from a very, very humble background, from an agrarian background, where nobody in his village ever went beyond the village. Yet, because his mother looked at some spark in him and encouraged him to study. And somebody down there told him that, no, go to Benares Hindu University. You might be able to have a better future than if you remain in the village and you tend to your father's fields. So despite the discouragement from extended family members, my great-grandmother maybe not sold, maybe she put her jewelry with the local money lender, got a little bit of money, and sent my grandfather to Benares to pursue his graduation. And of course, he came into contact with people there that changed his destiny. And he became a doyen in the cement industry. Now, he had 3 girls, 3 daughters. My mother is the eldest daughter. I'm the eldest daughter's daughter. So for him, at that age and that stage and that phase in the Indian country, this was again pre-independence and just after independence when my mother was born, his notion of empowerment was at least to allow the girls to go to school and to study. And that continued into my generation too. Nobody ever thought that I would actually come to this level where today I'm actually called by a prestigious institute to talk to women executives. So today we are in 2021. What do you think? When do you think the world will see a really gender parity world? Do you think in the next few years or in the next decade? When do you think? I'd like some sort of answers from the participants here.
Actually, it all depends on, because the women entry is very less.
Yes.
At all levels.
Yes.
Why women are not there in the top position?
No, I'm not talking about even top. I'm talking generally, like forget work, forget society, forget political careers. When do you think that we can see a gender neutral world where nobody is discriminated because of the gender that they are born on?
It's already there, and I think another 5 to 10 years that will not be there at all.
But after 10 years, we will have a very fantastic gender. Oh, that's really nice. Anybody else? Somebody said 50 years? 20, 30 years at least? Sadly, UN has done a study. And and every year they keep increasing it actually, which is again very sad. So they say that it will take at least, and I'm saying at least 100 years. Because madam, what you're saying is, yes, people like us who are a little bit privileged, we are seeing a gender neutral or an equal gendered world. But for every single person like me, there may be at least 10 million women who are being discriminated daily. So what about for them? You go out of this institute into the field or into the village that Shamirpet is known for. There is a beautiful village here. Go and talk to any of the ladies there. Do they have an equal opportunity? I'm sure they don't. I'm sure they're oppressed. I'm sure they have to depend on the male companion or the male family member of their family. This is pretty sad, and not everybody is aware of it. So the Rear Admiral also just pointed out that there was a study on the gender gap index. A lot of countries are ranked on that gender gap index. And out of 153 countries, we are at the 112th position, which we've been actually slipping in the last 2-3 years, which is very sad. So probably slipping may not be a correct word. There are other countries that are doing much better. So their ranks are increasing and pushing us back. So we as a nation may not be working on trying to reduce the gender gap. While the government of India, especially in the last few years, have come out with beautiful initiatives, whether it is Make in India, whether it is Clean, Swachh Bharat, whether it is Digital India, sadly, none of it is attuned or connected or related to the gender aspect, which is missing. Why do you think so? Probably, see, in my assumption, I feel that whoever these committees, because ultimately there are these advising committees that advise the politicians that come out with these sort of initiatives. Maybe these committees have all men. And as madam, you said very rightly, because men have been in the system for the past 70, 80, 90 years. So they've grown, and they've grown on their own merit to come into those committees. Whereas women, as even the Rear Admiral said, his own classmates all dropped out. And they were offered an equal education as the Rear Admiral. And when he could become the chairperson of a public sector company, I'm sure the 4 ladies of your batch are just mothers at home, which is not wrong. I'm not saying that they did a wrong thing, because yes, work-life balance is a pressing challenge on a day-to-day basis. And culturally, mothers have to take most of the burden of child rearing, of homekeeping, of all the household chores. So maybe they took up the challenge, or they took up the responsibility of keeping the home fires burning, of taking care of maybe the elderly people in their families, and that's the reason why they disconnected from the work environment. Now, why do you think that matters? That's okay. In a class of, say, 100, just 4 people left, what impact would that have on the nation? Do you think that would impact the nation? It would? What way? There was another study that I would like to also quote. This was a study done on the IITs, and all of you know that IITs are the prestigious institutes for engineering especially. And they took out the data from all the students who passed out from those IITs from the year 1990 to 2000. In that decade, they found that less than 6% of the women who graduated from these IITs are today in the workforce. Whereas their classmates are heading unicorns, they are heading multinational companies, they are heading Indian companies, public sector units. They're doing extremely well in the field of academia, maybe sitting as professors in top-ranked universities all across the world. Yet, how much of the investment went into these girls to get them educated? And today they are just, I know it's not correct to say that, but they're just sitting at home doing nothing, as in a way that they are not economic participants to the country. Now I'll tell you why I'm trying to correlate that, and just let me know what you see on this chart. All of you, I know most of you are from the banking sector, so you must be knowing what the GDP of a country is, the gross domestic product. Yes? So this is actually a chart that is ranking globally the countries on the basis of its gross domestic product. So which do you think is the largest country that is contributing huge gross domestic product to its own country? The United States. It's almost 20, this is actually last year's data, so I think currently it must be around $21 trillion. That's huge. And probably the pandemic would have made it stagnant at that $21 trillion. Where is India in that? It's at 2.73 trillion. It may be about 2.99 trillion, I think, for the last year, but maybe this year, because of the pandemic, we could have again shrunk. But roughly, we are at the 7th or 8th rank in the ranking of the global GDP index. So behind the United States is China. Then you have Germany, you have United Kingdom, you have France, maybe Japan. I'll show you the next slide too. What does this tell us? So this is again another statistic on the population of the world and the countries that are dominated. And of course, where does India stand here? We are at number 2 position, and we are almost running neck to neck with China. But while China is at the number 2 position in the global economy, if you look at China with, I think, close to 15 trillion, I think right now is their trillion, because they are the only country that did very well during the pandemic. All other countries fell, but because they've become the manufacturing hub for the world, they continued to do well, in spite of their struggles with the Western world. With the US, with certain European nations, they still continue to do well because it's very difficult to disassociate from a country that is actually manufacturing goods for your country. So what do you think is the comparison between the earlier chart and this chart? Yes, so the population. So population of a 1.3 billion is contributing to a measly 2.3 or even less than 3 trillion. What does that mean? That means a very, very small percentage of our population is actually working to be able to generate that sort of a revenue to the country. Whereas in the United States, what do you think the United States population is? Because United States is a very small ball there. It's roughly less than 1/3 of the Indian population. I think they've got about 350 million or something like that. So that population is working so efficiently to create almost a $21 trillion US dollars economy. What do you think is the difference between a 21 trillion US dollars economy and a 2 trillion or a 3 trillion US dollars economy? How does it affect me? I mean, why am I bothered? Let them do what they want, and we are doing whatever we want, and things are hunky-dory. At least for me, it is hunky-dory. Why should I care what's happening in society? And we move along. Why is it affecting you? So what? Per capita income, why am I bothered? I'm earning a good salary. All of you must be earning very good salaries, must be having a decent quality of life. Why should we care?
The progress comes only when everybody works.
Yes.
If few people work, then only those people will touch it.
So why do we like to go to all these countries abroad? And why do we compare, why? Yeah, so the infrastructure. Don't we love the roads? Don't we love the greenery? Don't we love the quality of the environment, the greenery? Of course, IP is situated in such a fantastic campus that we really don't know, and even the drive to the campus is so beautiful. The roads are quite decent. You don't have the bumpy, the village type of roads. But this is a minuscule percentage of what the Indian society is all about. Maybe even 10 to 15 kilometers beyond the municipal limits of Hyderabad, you go into the hinterland, it's pathetic. People don't have running water at their homes. People have to go so far maybe to use a restroom, because today, yes, with Swachh Bharat and with open defecation free concept, that at least the government is looking into these basic issues. But till almost a decade back, nobody was even bothered about those things. And as a result, today, even after so many years of independence, we are still lacking basic amenities for the majority of our population. But what is happening to all the women who are studying? Because today, if you look at every Tier 2, Tier 3 town, Tier 1 town, metros, cities, we have fantastic colleges, institutions of repute, academic, institutions, and every institution has an equal enrollment of women and men. Yes? So while actually on that gender gap index, the gender gap index that we came at that 112th position actually ranks countries on 4 parameters. One is on education, one is on health, one is on political empowerment, and one is on economic empowerment. So the country actually did extremely well on the education front, because yes, today we are allowing women to go and study. Just like my grandfather thought that, say, I've come out of that rural agrarian-based sort of family, and I've become now into an industrialized. So yes, I am empowered. I'm empowering my daughters. I'll allow them to go and study. But then that education lasted only maybe until their 12th grade, or maybe at the most up to a graduation. That was only to make them more attractive on the marriage market, so that you get a little bit better grooms, and you can get them placed into better families. And that was what continued into my generation too, because they didn't know anything apart from that. They were not exposed to other thoughts, and these are all the pre-internet, pre-social media days where you really didn't know better. So if you look at this, the ratio of the female to male participation in the world, look at the color that India is at. It's a very light pink, pale pink, and if you look at the graph below, it shows that we are very, very low. And what is actually surprising is, while education has actually gone up, the access, the opportunity to get educated has gone up, how does the Indian graph look like? While it was increasing up to early 2000s, there is a sharp decline. That means, yes, we are getting our girl child educated, and today they are getting educated really well, whether it is in the engineering discipline, whether it is medicine, whether it is in law, whether it is in the civil services, you name it, humanities, you name it, pharmacy, any of the disciplines, all colleges have at least 50 to 60% women enrolled and they are getting graduated. You go to any convocation of any of the universities, women will be getting the top ranks there. Gold medals, silver medals, they will be doing extremely well. Yet, does that translate when they come into career? Of late, up to the 2000, yes, they were coming in as freshers into companies, into the corporate world, into the public sector world. But that moment, the first challenge, or I would like to call it the first milestone that they come across. The first milestone is you're getting married. The second milestone is you get pregnant, you have children. The third milestone is because of the cultural context, women are supposed to take up a major chunk of the household chores. So if your child is sick, you take off, your husband doesn't take off. If they're elderly parents or in-laws at home, then you are expected to take care, not them. And this was also participated by us because we also thought that, no, why should the husband stay at home when we can take care? It is centuries of conditioning that as women, we are the people who can take care of our children well. And God forbid the day that we leave our kids with our husbands or with our in-laws, our mind will be always, did they take care? Did they feed? Did they do this? Because we can't let go. While that is nice for some time, that is impacting the nation in a long run. Now, generation after generation, if we continue to do this, and now in the pandemic scenario, that has come down to below 20%, because the pandemic has impacted the economy drastically. A lot of women work in the unorganized sector. A lot of women work in the micro and small sector. A lot of businesses had to get closed because of the pandemic. And even in the bigger businesses, the first set of people who are let go are probably the women because they feel that the men can cope up with additional responsibilities, with additional work hours, whereas the women may not be able to do that. There is also the burnout on the lady because she has to take care of her children who is also studying from home. So that additional burden is not allowing her to take equal responsibility at work, and she's having a lot of burnout. And there are so many cases where women have come out and said that this is enough, we are not able to handle it. And one thing is there is no household help because nobody is allowed to come into your house because of the lockdown restrictions. So you have the household responsibilities fallen onto you, the cooking, the cleaning, the taking care of your children. On top of that, your work. On top of that, taking care of any aged in-laws or parents and your husband. It became too much, and there was a lot of people quitting at this point of time. So I'm sure if this particular slide goes on into 2021, that will also see a massive drop. Maybe it's seeing a massive drop in the other countries too, but they can afford it because they are at 60 and 70%, whereas we are below 20%. Now, as I again wanted, and I think the lady behind said that today, why do we go to other countries? Why do we always talk greatly of Western countries or the developed nations? It's because of the quality of life that one gets there. That's because of the infrastructure that is found in those countries and the bad infrastructure that the country is burdened with. How does a country get its infrastructure? Now we are looking at whether it's utilities, whether it's railways, whether it's communication, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education. How does a country get all of this? Who creates it? Does the government do it by itself? Yeah, so the taxes that we pay. And today, how much of the Indian population is actually paying those taxes? And even in the people who are working are always trying to see, why should we pay? And they're always looking for loopholes to undercut and underpay, which is nice because, yes, if I look at it from my personal point of view, I'm earning, say, 10 lakhs, 3 lakhs goes off to government because I'm in the 30% bracket. Why should I, what are they giving me? Good roads? Are they giving me anything? No benefits. Why should I be burdened? Let me look for ways to cut down that 3 lakhs to say 1 lakh. Let me reduce my revenue, show a lower income. And I do all those sort of things, which a lot of people like me do. how does that impact the infrastructure? Ultimately, we are responsible. And then we ourselves again sit in all these functions, in these forums, and then we crib. Government is not doing anything, the roads are pathetic, the garbage is not being picked up. Horrible healthcare, the pandemic was really badly handled by the government, they just could not do that. All these contract workers who came from other cities and other rural areas, very, very badly manhandled. That was the reason why there was a spike in all these COVID cases. It is easy for us to comment, to criticize, to blame, and we always tend to blame the government. Yes? But now this 130 crores that is living in India, all of them require all these things. All of them require the roads to travel on. All of them require healthcare. All of them require the communications, whether it is your logistics, whether it is your railways, buses. I was actually in the country of Japan for a short duration course, just like the course that you people are doing. This was a course that was conducted by the Department of, it was the Ministry of Electronics and IT, MIT or something, and CII. So they actually sent 19 women like me, entrepreneurs and professionals, to Japan to learn about women leadership policies there. We were fantastically, looking at the entire country, so beautifully maintained. You go from a place like, maybe as far as from Hyderabad to Bombay within just 30 minutes, because they have the super fast bullet trains. We all went there and we were cribbing. Why doesn't India have, since when do we have the locomotive trains here, and why does it take overnight journey to go to Bombay or Delhi? Why can't we go in an hour or half an hour or 30 minutes? Why can't the country invest in bullet trains? We crib and all do that, but we don't understand what exactly gets into all those. So I'm trying to relate that chunk of population that got educated, yet are not contributing to the economy. Yet we are a burden on the economy because we need all the services of that economy. And then we also crib that no, government is not doing anything, which is again very wrong. How many of you know about the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN? And this was also done almost quite a while back, I think at least 10 years back, where UN has been promoting countries to ensure that whatever policies they take up, whatever areas they work in, that we assure that these goals are met, that there is no poverty, that there is zero hunger, there is gender equality at number 5, that we have responsible consumption and production, that we have clean water and sanitation. How many of us have clean water and sanitation? Yes, the people that are here, that are in cities, maybe have it. What about the rest of India? To get a small pot of water, women in Rajasthan have to travel on foot without even footwear to such long distances to get just a pot of water for their entire family. Yet, where are we? Are we anywhere close to achieving any of these goals? How can the country achieve the goals? Yes, there needs to be policy, there needs to be committees who are working for it, there needs to be some sort of monitoring mechanism. And as I earlier said, all these committees today may be having maybe 1 or 2 women there, because yes, those 1 or 2 exceptionally qualified women were the outliers. They sustained, they continued, and they were able to come to these levels. But how much of their perspective is being held? How much of their perspective is being taken into policy formulation? All of you know that a few years back, I think in 2013, we had the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act being enacted. Number of years. Because prior to that, we were only running with that Visakha committee, and we were just keeping quiet on that. I actually headed the Confederation of Indian Industry for the state of Telangana, which is an industry body. And most of you may be aware that industry bodies and industry forums are very, very male dominated. They don't see women there. And it was very, very surprising when I got nominated to that role. It is a role that a person doesn't lobby for it. I mean, definitely I would have never lobbied for it. But when I came into that position, I found the amount of discrimination that happens in higher circles, in the government, in bureaucracy, in corporates. So when this prevention of sexual harassment law was enacted in 2013, towards the end of 2013, we constituted from CII a committee of all the state council members. The state council members has all the CMDs, the CEOs of all the companies in the state of Hyderabad. So we wanted to create a program to bring about awareness on what this POSH is all about. So yes, all these gentlemen came, we were all in a room like this, and I remember the gentleman next to me, and he runs a very, very big spinning industry, and a spinning industry has a lot of women, especially on the shop floor. And he was bending over to his other co-participant and saying, such laws, if they come, should deter us from hiring more women. Now, if the owner of a company talks like that, how do you think that we are going to see gender equality in the next 20, 30 years or in the next 10 years? When the amendment to the Maternity Act came up, I think that came out in 2014 or 2015, if I'm not mistaken. Women were elated, yes, but there are a lot of other women who were not elated. And these women were heading HR in a lot of companies. And why were they not elated? Because instead of paying for 14 weeks, you have to pay today for 26 weeks, which is an additional cost, which impacted the bottom line. But if women ourselves are bringing down, where do you think we are going to support and encourage? And the price of that additional 12 weeks is what a company needs to bear. They are not looking at getting the loyalty of that lady. They would have imparted so much on training for her. And yet they are willing to just because the maternity bill has asked you to pay for an additional 12 weeks, you don't want to consider hiring more women. Lot of HR managers, whether they admit it or not, are biased. When women and men come for a role, somewhere below, they always think, because they are looking at the corporate bottom line, they are looking at the turnover, and they are looking at a purely empirical method where they can deliver value to the company. They are looking at, if I hire, say, I need 100 positions, if I hire 50 women for that, then I will always be having maternity payouts, and that will impact my bottom line. And I will always struggle to get work completed. But if I get 100 positions, 100 men, then I'm sure maybe 10 or 15 there may be attrition, regular attrition, but beyond that I can manage. And this goes about a lot in a lot of companies. It is only very progressive companies that have specified policies that ensure that there is transparency and that ensure that these sort of discriminations are curtailed. And that is the reason why I think now we have a lot of disclosures in your annual reports. We have a lot of policy that is being promulgated so that we try to bring down those biases. But still, in general, these things do happen. And that is the reason why we need women in all places where decisions are being made. Because you really can't blame the man. The man wouldn't know that leaving the baby at 14 weeks is equal to leaving the baby at 26 weeks. I mean, you're still nursing the baby. How do you ensure nursing a baby when you leave the baby and you come to office and you're in the middle of a meeting and your baby needs, and maybe your milk is coming out? How do you handle all these issues? Because these things are very difficult to talk in a regular office. And your manager may not understand. You can't blame them. You have to sensitize them. Are we doing these sort of sensitization programs in companies? Are we trying to help? Because we need a helping hand until the playing field is level. Today, do you believe that there is a level playing field for women? It's not. So until then, I do subscribe that we need quotas. Though the parliament has said that we need 33% of the women as legislators, today we still haven't received or achieved that mark. It is so difficult. And then there is a group of men who think that why make it easier for women? Why should we give them the special privileges? Let merit count, which is correct. But merit can be counted when the playing field is level. Just as Professor was talking about Einstein and Einstein failing in some subjects of history, which was not his. You can't really judge a person when you give them an unlevel playing field. And that is what is happening to women today. This year for 2021 is Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-free world. And as was spoken by my earlier speakers, empirical evidence has pointed out that those nations that were headed by women have actually surpassed the way that they have handled this crisis, rather than the alpha male. I'm sure maybe 2 decades ago, if we had asked Rear Admiral, because he's in the Navy and one has to prepare for battle, warship, the requisite necessity was that one had to be an alpha male. You cannot be empathetic, you cannot sympathize, you cannot say, ayo papam, you cannot say, oh, no, we cannot do this, because if you do that, you're squashed by your enemy. But in a world going forward, do we need to go to war with one another? Why can't we live in peace? Why can't we promulgate peace? Why can't we ensure everybody works hand in hand for progress? And those countries today that are headed by these women, whether it's New Zealand, whether it's the Scandinavian countries that have very, very young women leading their countries, have such fresh versions of leadership that are doing so beautifully in trying to lead their countries and trying to lead women-friendly policies. Because today, ladies, we are finding and we are fighting for an equal world because we feel that we are a minority. Maybe after this 100-year period is over and we find an equal, balanced world, who do you think is going to find themselves in minorities and then still fight for their roles? It could be transgenders. It could be disabled people. When the Rear Admiral spoke about diversity, it means diversity in every form, whether it is gender, whether it is age, whether it is an ability, physical ability, intellectual ability, whether it is in your sexual orientation. So when do we come to a world where pure merit counts? And after merit, it is the empathy that counts. Yes, not everybody is born with the IQ of Einstein. But that doesn't mean that only the Einstein IQ people should rule and the rest be oppressed. No. Everybody should get a fair chance of trying to move. So as I was mentioning to you about this trip that I had taken to Japan, this was in the year 2014. And we went there, this was almost 6 years back, and this 19 of us, we went with such stars in our eyes, thinking that, we can really learn something from Japan, because after all, Japan is a highly developed nation, and women, very, very high participation rate in the labor force. But after going there, we were in for a surprise. We understood that everything is not hunky-dory there. They also have their own issues. Apparently, the Japanese culture doesn't allow women to come into superior roles. They're allowed to work, just like certain people in India think that empowerment means allowing your girl child to study and that's it. For them, it is allowing the ladies to work, but only in certain roles. You don't find women in senior positions. You don't find women heading organizations. Very, very minuscule percentage of women who head as CEOs or as entrepreneurs of big organizations. We were actually surprised because in India we do have pockets of excellence. We have the entire banking sector that is beautifully being managed by women, whether it's the private banking or it's the public sector banks. We have certain IT companies that are run by very, very dynamic women. We have the pharmaceutical companies today that are run by very dynamic women. So in India, while we do have the gender parity, the gender gap, we still have pockets where we are allowing women who cross those glass ceiling and they can get to the top. Yet Japan has that culture where it is very, very subtle. Nobody openly says it. I don't know how many of you have heard about this news that apparently for the last 50 years, 5 decades or so, the entrance exam to the medical universities in Japan consciously removed all the female participants. Go and do a Google search and you'll be able to read about it. And this just came to light about just before the pandemic. And it made a huge hue and cry. That means they were consciously not even allowing their women to, even though they were meritorious, not get through their entrance exams on some pretext or the other, so that only the men were passing those entrance exams and getting into medical college. Now, doing that has created an entire generation of women have been lost to the medical profession, who could have otherwise excelled in the medical profession. So while we were there and we learned the good and the bad, there was this particular professor who was from the US, who had her entire career in the US, a Japanese lady, and post-retirement she was invited back to her country, and she was heading one of the departments in the Tokyo University. And then she taught us these 6 ups of leadership, which I really loved. And wherever I go today, I actually share those ups because I find them very practical. And maybe subconsciously or unconsciously, I've been practicing them all throughout my life, and that's the reason why maybe I am here today. But today I consciously do that so that it evolves both for me personally and professionally. And typically we are culturally conditioned not to really go wherever it's not necessary. But if we don't go and we don't do that extra walk, we are never going to get to those committees where that can shape, which will actually create policy that will shape the next generation. How many of us actually speak out? When we are invited, when we are even asked, we feel inhibited, and that we can't blame because of our upbringing. We are always taught to be calm, to be soft, not to really. Especially in a room filled with men, all the more we feel inhibited to speak. I'm sure academicians don't feel that because they are conditioned to actually teach. So, but that is the normal case. Wherever we go, we don't. When we ask for questions also, it takes a lot of time for the women to start asking for questions. Third up is to look up. This has 2 connotations. One is you can look at the bigger picture. Like I've shown you the bigger picture today. What are we? We are just one of that 130 crores. Yet, if that one does something that will impact her family, a concentric circle beyond that is maybe the extended family, a concentric circle beyond that is maybe her neighborhood, maybe her community, maybe the society, and that's how it can start impacting a bigger audience. Looking up also means to look up at role models. See, role models needn't be somewhere huge, it needn't be Indra Nooyi, because they are all very, 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 very far away from us, and they look very aspirational. Look at role models within your own families, within your own companies, within your own groups. Because a role model means that they have a personal attribute that you would like to emulate. It doesn't mean that you copy a person completely. There are some good traits, some good attributes of that person that you'd like to imbibe in your own personality that will help you to become a better person. A person might have better listening skills. A person might have better empathy, showing of no empathy. A person may be very good in team building. A person may be very good in problem solving. A person might be good in collaborating. And these are certain traits that will help you in future in your career as you grow up in your career. Because as Professor had mentioned, the IQ will only take you to a certain level. Beyond that will be the EQ. And components of an EQ are all these softer skills that are intangible, that cannot be taught with a book, with theory, with classes. It can only be taught by looking and practicing. So look up in both these connotations. All of you come from the corporate side, so all of you do understand that the ability to team up is very essential. Unless you're a team player, your boss would not really talk highly of you, or your teammates also will not really appreciate you. But if you are a good team player, if you are able to support the weakest link in your team, if you're able to, as a team, pull off the responsibilities, that impacts your organization, it impacts society. Now, while we are excellent team workers on the professional side, we also have to be excellent team players on the personal side. And I know for a fact that Indian women, we don't like to impart our household responsibilities to somebody else, maybe mother-in-law, maybe sister-in-law, maybe to the husband, because we feel, no, kitchen is my domain. I only will make the best food that my child will eat. If I only make the chapati, my husband will eat. If I let the servant do, he will not eat, and poor guy, he will be starving throughout the day. This is the general tendency, because we feel that we are the best cooks and we know our children, we know our families the best. It may be beautiful for you to continue to do that, provided you have the energy throughout your life. Such women will get into a burnout much faster, because you really cannot become a super cook, a super mother, a super wife, a super worker at the office. There will be days where you're not able to handle everything. At that time, what do? So you will have to train people around you to take certain responsibilities which you don't think are super important, to delegate that and let more people involve in your household chores. First and foremost is your husband. And I know all the men here may be thinking, what is this lady standing here and talking about it? But that actually helps. And I think even in my case, for me to come to this level, if it was not for the support of my own husband, I definitely think that I would not have been able to make it to this level, because one cannot fight a constant battle throughout their lives to be able to come to this level. And a lot of women who are not very, very successful on the home front, have either gone for divorce or separation, or they've abandoned their familial duties to be able to do very, very well on the corporate side. So you have to take a call. I mean, if it is worth spending your life fighting for those things. A lot of women in India, what they do is, because as the statistics have shown, that after their education, after doing so well academically, they give it up because they can't really fight every single day at home. And that's the reason why we don't see that pipeline going up, and we see that graph falling down. And if this keeps on continuing, because it didn't happen in my grandmother's generation, it didn't happen in my mother's generation, if it doesn't happen in my generation, then again my daughter will face the same discrimination when she comes to age, and my granddaughter also will find the same discrimination. So as far as possible, can I make certain differences? Can I change the attitudes in my own family, for instance? I got married 34 years back. And 34 years back, in a traditional community, for a woman to step out, especially into a corporate world, was unheard of. And I had numerous challenges in these 34 years. I had family members coming behind and talking behind my back, saying that, no, why is she talking to men out there? Why is she actually going out for this meeting? Does she have to go overnight for this program? I mean, what benefit is it going to do if it is not impacting the children? There was a time when my children were in that critical stage of +2, 10th, 11th, 12th, and that is the critical time when a mother is supposed to be at home to take care of the children so that they don't go. And of course, I had a lot of problems with my own son. I mean, he had that typical teenage rebellion. He would bunk classes, he wouldn't attend. I would get notes from college, from school saying that, your son is into all this untoward behavior. He got into a wrong gang. Now, the blame nobody blamed him. They said, chalo, he's a kid, he'll do that. They blame me. You are the person who's not sitting at home to take care of him. Look at your sister-in-law. She's bringing up brilliant children who are doing so well. Look at that sister-in-law. Look at your co-sister. They're doing so well. Look at you. You're all the time running around. That's the reason your children are... Nobody blamed my husband because he's expected to go to work. And what happens if... of course, I did cry. I did give up a couple of times. But if it was not for my husband, I would have given up long back. And I would have been at home today. Maybe at this very time, I would have been maybe watching a serial or cooking or something. Not standing in front of you and talking to such meritorious women who can tomorrow move and rule the world, rule India. So that one decision that I stuck to continue to struggle on, to be consistent with what I do, has actually helped me. And it's not that I'm some great sheikh that I had an IQ of Einstein or something that I was destined to do this. No, I was just an ordinary lady, an ordinary girl from an ordinary background. If you look at my academic achievements, I'm just a Bachelor of Arts. Though I wanted to do medicine, though I did pretty well in school up to 10th grade and then 11th and 12th, I couldn't get into the meritorious category of the medical entrance. And though I pleaded with my family to send me to the neighboring state, because at that point, the state of Andhra Pradesh did not have capitation fee for the medical colleges. I said, please pay a donation. I'd like to go and study. They said, no. Where is the necessity for you to even pay a donation, which is not necessary. But if I get you to become a doctor, where will I find a husband for you? That was the thought process those days. In fact, I went to an all-girls school. I went to an all-girls college. Today, I can count on one hand my classmates who were able to come to this level along with me. Whereas I'm sure Rear Admiral or Professor Menon or Professor Subramaniam must be having 99% of their classmates are all in very, very distinguished positions. And that also helps a lot in their networking capabilities. It doesn't help us because I don't have anybody to call up and talk to them. And I can't, certain things you just can't call a man and talk to them. And this is what is the fifth up, which is very, very necessary. Don't give up. There are a lot of programs today to bring back women who have given up on work, trying to reintegrate them into the corporate world. With lot of proactive companies are doing it. Lot of chartered accountants are there, lot of doctors are there, lot of lawyers are there who've done brilliantly, yet because of various challenges have given up. Today there is options. And I think the world has also evolved where you have a work from home option, you have a distance, you have flexi times. So there is a more organized way in trying to bring back women into the workforce. And we all need to do that. We need to promote it. We need to push for that. And the last up, let me ask you a question. What do you think would identify a true leader? What is that one thing that the leader has that you say, okay, he or she is a true leader? Sure, anybody can answer.
Shall I try to give the correct answer?
Please do.
Show up is already there.
Yeah, show up.
I thought it was show up.
Listening, grooming, yes. Giving back to society, yes. All those are very, but that's one thing. What does a leader normally have? Leader has so many followers. Yes, they lead and they follow, inspire. No, one distinguishing attribute that for me as a leader is not to have tons and tons of leaders, tons and tons of followers or people who are following me, but to create another set of leaders below them. And that's what you'll have to do, is to lift others up. When you come to a position where you can actually help other people, try to use that to lift other people who are lesser privileged than you. It could be your own family members who do not have that encouraging support system. You can talk to the men in those families. Maybe a nephew who's not allowing his educated wife to work. Maybe a younger brother, maybe your co-sister's daughter-in-law is not allowed to work. Somebody there, I'm sure there's so many areas where you can actually guide, where you can actually help them. Maybe your own household helpers who are working in your own house, they have their own children. Of course, see, they are not having the skills that allow them to get a better paying job. But can you help their children to come out of that cycle of poverty? So are you using your status today in trying to bring about a better world for people around you? You don't have to really go and do something out there. Do it within your own circle. And the more of such people doing that will actually bring about a change in society slowly. So hopefully in that 100 years can then come down to maybe 50 years, maybe 30 years, maybe 40 years. In that, we also need the men who will work with us, who will champion this cause, who will work towards inclusion. I've been asking people to not talk about inclusion, because what does inclusion mean? Inclusion somewhere shows that somebody is trying to include somebody else. When you are in that position to include somebody else, that means you're given that person a little bit more power to include them. Rather, I'm telling them, let us try to look at integration. Let us try to work towards integrating people. They can be of a different gender, they can be of a different sexual orientation, they can be of a different physical ability, of a race, of an ethnicity, of an economic background. But let us try to bring integration into every sphere that we are working. And with that, I'll stop and I'll open it up for questions. And I hope that I was able to bring you a bird's eye view of what leadership is all about. Because when you talk about leadership, I know from an organizational behavior perspective, from a theory perspective, there is tons of theory, there is tons of do this, don't do that, be empathetic, be a good listener. All that is very good. But ultimately, what is the impact that a leader is able to bring in their lifetime? If that can be addressed, if that can be looked into, if that can be consciously worked into, I think that will bring about a change. So this set of women executives, when you go back to your respective workplaces, what is the change that you will be able to impact, not only at your own workplaces, within your own families, within your own societies? Today, in my family, my mother-in-law is again very traditional, very, very traditional. I recently had 2 granddaughters, one by my son and one by my granddaughter, and she was very upset. She said, again, the girl gang has come into our family, and they're all the typical male chauvinist, male patriarchy. They say that a man only has to be born, a man only will have the lineage and all that. In spite of the fact that, it is the women who take care of a lot of responsibilities. Even she today, when any male member in my family is getting an alliance, even she asks, what does the girl do? Is she educated? Is she working? So there is a change in her outlook. Now suppose if that day, 34 years back, I discontinued my studies. I was married when I was 18. I was just in first year of college, and everybody expected me to give up my studies. I mean, that was the norm. Like you only study until you get married. Once you're married, your marital home is your end all and be all and all that. So nobody expected me to go back to college and to study, to get a degree. And for your information, last year I actually enrolled in the Indian School of Business for an executive doctoral program. So I've just finished 5 months of courses, and it might take me another 2 to 3 years, but I hope to at least get a doctorate on my name. And this was from a girl who never ever thought that I would get a degree or a qualification to my name. Because when I was in high school, I remember one of my classmates, she would love reading palms. And she looked at my palm and she said, Vanita, your that education line is absolutely missing. It's invisible. You will not study. I'm sure 10th class final exams, you will get married, you will be saddled with 2-3 kids, and you will be a homemaker. And that struck me somewhere that, my God, am I again going to be repeating what my mother, my grandmother went through? I don't want that sort of a life for me. And every time that it happened, because I got married when I was in degree first year, so I first of all, I didn't get through the entrance, so I never became a doctor, so that dream collapsed. Then I went into Bachelor of Arts because nobody guided me and said that, no, yes, you're good in science, you're not good in math. I know arts does not hold that interest, so get into a BSc. Nobody told me go into a BSc also, so I just went and did a BA. Then in the first year after getting married, everybody thought I would give up. But then I said, let me go to college. I would at least like to go and meet my friends. If not, the subjects never held any interest for me. But I said, at least it's getting me out of the house. Let me go and meet my friends. Then my husband moved to the US, so I went along with him. There I joined university along with him because I loved the entire system and I loved the independence, the way that people were given, the way the life was made so independent by people. Which in the Indian society those days we were all still shackled to the patriarchal way of how families are being raised. So there I actually got an opportunity. I did study there for some time, but unfortunately my husband finished his master's in 2 years. But for me, an undergrad, I had to discontinue again. So every time it felt that getting a bachelor degree was very elusive for me. That means that girl who was a very, very good palm reader has destined me to be an illiterate. So after we moved back from the US after some time. I then went back. I wrote those exams in a distant mode. I got the bachelor's. I then asked my grandfather, because as I also mentioned that he was the doyen of cement industry, he had number of industries. He was grooming all the grandsons of the family. And I went and asked him, can I come and work for you? And he was shocked because I don't think any girl ever went and asked him, can we come and work for you? He thought, okay, must be some 10, 15 days, 1-2 months hobby she'll be. And then once she gets the first issue, she is going to give up. So he said, okay, come, you can come and work, but not in the cement company, not in the refractories, not in the traditional male dominated, but in the financial services company that he had. So that's how I joined the financial services company. Parallelly, I also thought that if I just go with a Bachelor of Arts to a company, what is the respect that people are going to give me? And they will always treat me as the chairman's granddaughter. And I didn't want that to happen. So I did parallelly apply to the IPHY business school, and luckily I got admission. They did not look at my age. I don't know how they actually did look at it because I was the oldest in class when I joined. And this was the pioneering batch of 1995, 1997. So first day of college when I came in, and like this, we were 89 of us. There were, I think, 8 girls, and the rest of them were boys. And they all came from very, very good engineering institutions. Maybe a couple of them were doing their BCom, doing their CA inter. A lot of them were from company secretary background. I was the only one from BA background, that too from a distant mode. I had to finish my exams. I was totally, feeling out of place. I thought, is it really worth coming into such a position? And when we were introducing ourselves, they were all youngsters, and I was almost 7 or 8 years elder to all of them, and I was married, and I had 2 children to boot, to take care of. So when I actually introduced myself, they were all shocked. They said, no, we don't believe you. Then the next day I had to bring both my children, and I had joined them in kindergarten. So I said, before you go to school, just show your faces here. So then I was nicknamed the mummy of the class, and everybody would then call me mummy, mummy, mummy. And I never had a clue that I would actually get through that course. But sheer hard work, sheer determination was the only thing that allowed me to get that second rank in that class, because most of them came from an engineering background. They were really good in math and statistics and all the financial analysis, and I was very poor. But that shows that what determination, what hard work can actually do. They were all complacent. They wouldn't submit their assignments because first thing is they all came from all over the country. So first, freedom for them, from parents, no submission, they didn't care. Every day they would bunk classes, they would go and go to movies, and they would have fantastic life. I was the only one diligently would come 9 o'clock. I would be the first student in class, last student out of class. I would submit my assignment on time. I think that helped me all along the way. Helped me to come to this level, even though I didn't have true merit, even though I didn't have true academic qualification. Today, when Sir was saying about this electrical engineer who's heading as a chairperson of a metallurgy company, SAIL is a steel company into metallurgy. It only shows that you have to have an open mind and the capacity to learn at every age or every stage in your life. Today, I lead an analytical instrumentation company which is highly, highly technical and scientific. And I don't have a background in any of the sciences beyond my high school science. Yet, the first few years, I had to involve myself into learning, because how do I then gain the respect of people who work for me, who work below me? So humility is also very, very necessary for a leader. And if that doesn't come, then it becomes a challenge for you to become a successful leader, because there are leaders, successful leaders and unsuccessful leaders. And as you all know, Trump, we've seen, would you consider him to be a successful leader? No, you don't want. He's a typical alpha male, and we don't need that. We need humane leaders. And I'm sure that women would become very, very good, humane, empathetic leaders, which the world today needs, especially in a post-COVID scenario. So with that, I will stop. And if time is there, you can ask me a couple of questions, or we can, I think, convene for tea.
Please be seated. Now let's give her a round of applause. We have a small function in other. Man, was that really interesting to listen to. I was watching these people occasionally. Everybody is listening to every word which Madam is saying. I really enjoyed what Madam said. And she did ask you, is there anyone from LIC? Madam, I did say that I went to LIC and other companies, but they said they won't send them over here. NTPC, Power Grid, Singareni, LIC also. But there are other organizations. But I will talk to you later, and one of the things which I put up in my slide is LIC. LIC means learning is continuous. And you are going to learn something from me now. You'll be surprised. Now what you have to do is just put Ramesh Tatla in the Google. You will find that that is the first analytical instrument company established in India in 1960. Now what Madam is going to learn from me is, I would not have seen the inside of Volvo, the inside of Titan, the inside of Harita Seating, and the inside of TVS Suzuki, but for the support which I received in 2007, when your company, along with one of your employees, who unfortunately passed away recently, one Mr. Satyanarayana Raju, if I mistake not, so he came along with me, and my colleague Professor Abbas Ali is a very good friend of your husband, and your company sponsored my visit along with Mr. Raju to all those organizations. Why I mentioned that is because LIC, learning is continuous. And Madam also went to learn in Japan. We got to visit factories. We got to see so many things. See, the function of a leader, not the. It's pregnant with meaning. The function of a leader is to groom his successor. So that sixth point is the most important. I thought I knew it, but I also learned one thing. What I learned today is I suffer from amnesia. That I learned just now. I never knew that I was somehow that happened. Anyway, let me wind up fast. Madam, those pictures were very telling statistics, pregnant with meaning, and you have told us about the importance of social infrastructure, physical infrastructure, innovation, which is very, very important, and so many other things. And she has given all of you hope. By lifting your hand, you might not reach the sky or touch the sky, but Madam's example is enough proof to you that you can conquer every Everest. There is a girl who lives about 20 kilometers from here. She will be maybe in Madam's footsteps next year. What is her age? Maybe 20 or 21. What has she done? She has conquered the 7 mountains in the world. 7 mountains in the world. Somebody asked Edmund Hillary, "Hey Hillary, why did you climb Mount Everest?" You know what he said? Because it was there. How many of us thought of climbing Mount Everest because it was there? Nobody. Now I cannot continue to rant like this. I have to stop somewhere or the other. I have enjoyed listening to whatever you have to say. I'm sure Rear Admiral Saab also will be immensely benefited by listening to Madam. Now we come towards the end of the session. May I request my colleague Karuna Madam to kindly come over. Oh, go ahead.
First of all, I really thank you, Captain, for giving us such an awesome motivational deliberation. And personally, I want to ask one question because we are going through the same phase of our life, handling our adults and kids. So, ma'am, I just want to know from you how you handle those things and where your children.
It was very, very difficult, Madam
Mitali.
Mithali, okay. Very, very difficult. I cried. I went through. I almost gave up, but there was a little bit of support from my husband. Though I had the other people in, like, parents, in-laws, siblings, all of them blaming me. Sometimes even my husband would blame me. And there were these days where it was so depressing that, I would think, was this all worth it? Was my, struggle to come into the corporate arena, to work and all that, was it really worth it? There are times when that happens, but then you are your own self-motivator, because if you don't help yourself, nobody will help you, including your own parents or your in-laws or your children or your spouse. So if you can cross that, then I think things will move. So that was the darkest time when I was going through with my children. But then, luckily for me, I would have been the worst mother. Today, maybe if you ask them, they might think that, she may be great to all of you, but she was the worst mother at home. They may say that, but there was a statement that my son made. Right now, my son is in the US. He is married. He has a daughter. He works for a startup in Orange County. And my daughter used to be in Boston. She's also married. She just had a baby recently. They moved back to India. And last summer, my son took his daughter to one of the supermarkets, and that girl did a huge tantrum there, and he was almost in tears. So then he came back and he told his wife, my daughter-in-law, that now I realize what my mother went through. I can really understand. So I used to always curse them. Until you have kids, you will always know you will be harassing me. So they never understood then, but now they sort of understood. So it is all a cycle of life. I mean, really we can't do anything. See, a lot of things, your experience can guide them, but they have to take it also. They will not take it. They will rebel, they will resist. And they will, I think the least person that they will listen to is the mother. That I think, it comes with the territory. It's very, very sad. I see very few children who actually listen to their mothers when they were young. Maybe when they become mothers or fathers themselves, then they understand that, the value that their mother brought to them. So we have to learn to live with it. But what actually helped me was my circle of my friends. I was able to leave out all this or sort of blurt out all these with a very close group who did not judge me, who sort of supported me emotionally. So I think that emotional support is also what is necessary for all of us. You have to inculcate very close friendships with at least one or two of people around you, whom you can share the darkest of things and they will not judge you, because you want a person who doesn't judge you. Today, society judges you for whatever you do, for whatever step you take.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. I'm sure your writing skills will be equally good as your oral skills. But in case you're thinking of writing an autobiography and you need a ghostwriter, I will show up. Right. So we come to the end of the first part of the program. My colleague Sinju has already thanked everyone over here, but I would like to repeat it once again. I would like to thank Rear Admiral Sanjay once again for having come over here, spent his valuable time. And beyond the chief guest address, he also was good enough to sit with us and listen to Madam's speech. Madam, we are also thankful to you for having come over here. As a token of our love, as a token of our affection and regard for both of them, may I now request my colleague Karuna to present a memento to Madam Vanita. Thank you.
I think you can give standing ovation to her.
Who is also the dean of the institute, to kindly come over here.
Thank you, sir.
And with that,